The first shout came just as the water turned red from the rusted tap. Mara Elwood froze, her hands still buried in the basin, knuckles white against soaked cotton. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the slap of wet fabric, the creak of the old washstand, and the way the late afternoon sun caught on soap bubbles like tiny, fragile stars. Then the shout came again, closer this time, and it carried her name, Amara, not yelled, not angry, just loud enough to cut through the noise of the square. Every conversation around the town well faltered, chickens stilled. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if Redbrook itself leaned in to listen. Mara slowly lifted her head. Evan Crowell stood at the edge of the square, hat in hand, dust clinging to his boots like he'd walked a long way to get here. His jaw was set tight, eyes darker than she remembered, the kind of look a man wore when he'd made a decision he could no longer outrun. People noticed. They always did when Evan Crowell stopped moving. He took one step forward. And with that single step, the fragile balance of the town began to crack. Redbrook was the sort of place that pretended nothing ever changed. Brick storefronts with sun-bleached signs, a church bell that rang whether anyone came or not, and a town square centered around an iron pump that had been repaired more times than anyone could count. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone remembered everything, especially mistakes. Mara had learned that lesson young. She'd returned to Redbrook 3 years earlier with nothing but a single suitcase, a tired smile, and the quiet determination of someone who'd already lost too much to lose her pride, too. Her father's house, small, sagging, but stubbornly standing, had been waiting for her at the edge of town like an old friend who didn't ask questions. The town, however, did. They always did. So she kept her head down, took in mending, washed clothes, helped old Mrs. Holloway with her groceries, and never stayed long enough for gossip to grow teeth. She spoke when spoken to, smiled when required, and learned to let the whispers roll past her like wind through dead leaves until Evan Crowell stepped back into her life. Evan had been Redbrook's golden boy once, son of the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties, the kind of man people expected to leave town and never look back. He'd done exactly that, until his father died and the ranch nearly collapsed under debts no one spoke about. When Evan came back, he didn't bring swagger or stories, just silence, and a reputation that had shifted from admiration to suspicion. Mara hadn't meant to cross paths with him again. It had happened the way most important things did, quietly, without permission. At the market, at the church steps, a nod, a shared glance, a moment held too long, and now here he was in the open square, with everyone watching. Mara wiped her hands on her skirt and turned fully toward him. "What is it, Evan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. He didn't answer right away. His gaze swept the square, lingering on familiar faces, faces that had once smiled at him, faces that now watched with guarded curiosity. Then his eyes returned to Mara. "I need to say something," he said. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mara's heart dropped. Now?" she asked softly. She glanced around. Mrs. Holloway had stopped mid-step. The baker leaned out his door, flour still on his hands. Even Sheriff Dalton stood frozen near the jailhouse, hand resting lightly on his belt. Redbrook was listening. Evan took another step closer. Close enough now that Mara could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the faint scar near his temple he'd never had before. "I should have said it sooner," he continued. "But I was a coward." The word landed heavy. Mara swallowed. "Evan, no," he said gently. "Let me finish." Silence fell so deep it felt physical. "We came back to this town thinking I could fix what was broken by pretending it didn't exist," he said. "I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, the past would leave me alone." His jaw tightened. It didn't. People shifted. Some frowned. Others leaned in. Evan looked straight at Mara. 3 years ago, when you left this town with nothing but rumors following you, I knew the truth." A sharp intake of breath passed through the square. Mara's hands curled into fists. "And I said nothing," Evan continued. "I let them blame you, let them whisper, let you carry something that was never yours." The silence broke, not with sound, but with understanding. Mara felt the world tilt. "Evan," she whispered, her throat burning. He raised his voice. Not shouting, but firm enough that no one could miss it. "She didn't steal a thing. She didn't lie. She didn't destroy anyone's life." Eyes turned. Whispers sparked. "The money that went missing from the mill," Evan said, "that was my doing, My gamble, my failure, and when it all came crashing down, I let her take the fall. The square erupted, not loudly, but in sharp, fragmented gasps. Mara's knees nearly gave out. Evan stepped closer still, standing beside her now, shoulder to shoulder. I was afraid, he said. So afraid of losing everything. Afraid of disappointing a town that had already put me on a pedestal I didn't deserve. He exhaled slowly. So today, I'm done being afraid. He turned to face the crowd fully. If anyone wants someone to blame, he said, voice unwavering, a look at me. The town of Redbrook fell completely, utterly silent. The truth has a strange way of rearranging everything it touches. Sheriff Dalton was the first to move. He cleared his throat, uncertainty flickering across his face. Even, he said slowly, you're saying the mill funds, I'm saying I took them, Evan replied. And I've spent every day since trying to pay them back. Murmurs rose again, louder now. Mrs. Holloway pressed a hand to her chest. The baker shook his head in disbelief. Mara stood frozen, the weight she'd carried for years suddenly shifting, sliding off her shoulders in a way that left her dizzy. You knew, she whispered, barely audible. Evan turned to her. I always knew. Then why? Harriet, I was wrong, he said simply. And I'm sorry. Sorry didn't erase the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. It didn't undo the closed doors, the averted eyes, the way her name had become a warning. But it cracked something open. Sheriff Dalton sighed. We'll need to talk, he said. Privately, Evan nodded. I'll come willingly. That, more than anything, shifted the mood. People began to disperse, slowly, uncertainly. Conversation sparked, quiet but intense. No one met Mara's eyes, not yet. When the square finally thinned, Mara remained by the washstand, staring at the water as if it might offer answers, staring at the water answers. Evan hesitated beside her. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just couldn't let another day pass. She looked up at him then, really looked. I didn't need you to be brave, she said. I needed you to be honest. I know, he replied. He replied, and I failed you. The words hurt because they were true. Because they were true. He tipped his hat. I'll leave you be. As he walked away, Mara felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not relief, not anger, but possibility. Her Redbrook didn't change overnight. Some people avoided Mara for days, unsure how to rewrite their version of her. Others brought quiet apologies, fresh bread, mended tools, eyes filled with regret. The hardest apology came from within. Mara had built her life on surviving the town's judgment. Letting go of that meant learning who she was without it. Evan faced his own reckoning, legal consequences. Financial ruin narrowly avoided. Long days repairing what he'd broken with his own hands. They crossed paths often, spoke carefully. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, Evan stopped beside the old washstand where it had all begun. I don't expect us to be anything, he said. But I hope, someday, you won't hate me. Mara smiled, small but real. I don't hate you, she said. I just needed the truth. Fred just needed the truth. He nodded. So did I. Months later, Redbrook gathered again in the square, this time for celebration. The mill reopened. Laughter returned. Music echoed off brick walls that had once held only whispers. Mara stood among them, no longer invisible. As she laughed, Evan caught her eye from across the square. He didn't speak, didn't need to. Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones finally spoken aloud. And sometimes a town falls silent, not in judgment, but in awe of the truth. In the end, Redbrook learned what Mara had always known. Silence protects lies, but courage, spoken at the right moment, can change everything.